scene. My husband did read on after this chapter, and there's nothing else, so I will be able to read completely the rest of this book, but it will be on part 2 of chapter 4 that I will be omitting, and I'll just be paraphrasing and letting you guys know what technically the scene is supposed to kind of be. But as respect for my channel and as respect for some of you as well, I will not be reading that scene, and I will have to, in part 2 of chapter 4, I will have to re-say this just to make sure that you guys understand that not all of us like to read books that have strong scenes like that. So, out of respect for my channel, myself, and some of you, I will not be reading it. I hope you guys can understand. Okay. Chapter 4. Can I get there by candlelight? Okay. October moved further away with every step Tristan took. He felt as if he were walking into summer. There was a path through the woods with a high hedge row to one side, and he followed the path. High above him, the stars glittered and gleamed, and the harvest moon shone golden yellow, the color of ripe corn. In the moonlight, he could identify briar roses in the hedge. He was becoming sleepy now. For a time, he fought to stay awake, and then he took off his overcoat to put it down. His bag, a large leather bag of the kind that would not become known as a Gladstone bag for another 20 years, for back in the world he had left, the Earl Oberdeen was Queen Victoria's prime minister, and he lay his head on his bag and covered himself with his coat. He stared up at the stars. It seemed to him then that they were dancers, stately and graceful, performing a dance almost infinite in its complicity. He imagined he would see the very faces of the stars. Pale they were, and smiling gently, as if they had spent so much time above the world, watching and scrambling, and the joy and the pain of the people below them, that they would not help being amused every time another little human knew itself the center of its world, as each of us does. And then it came to Tristan that he was dreaming, and he walked into his bedroom, which was also a schoolroom of the village of Wall. Miss Cherry tapped on the blackboard and bade them all to be silent, and Tristan looked down at his slate to see what lesson would be about, but he could not read what he had written there. Then Miss Cherry, who resembled his mother so much that Tristan found himself astonished, he had never before realized that they were the same person, called upon Tristan to tell the class the dates of all the kings and queens of England. "Excuse me," said a small and airy voice in his ear, "but would you mind dreaming a bit quieter? Only your dreams is spilling over into my dreams, and if there's one thing I've never been doing with its dates, William the Conqueror, 1066. That's as far as I go, and I swapped that for a dancing mouse." Said Tristan. "Keep it down," said the voice, "if you don't mind." "Sorry," said Tristan, and his dreams after that were in the dark. Show you the picture. That's Tristan. close to his ear. The mushrooms fried in butter with wild garlic. Tristan opened his eyes. Delight shone through the briar rose hedge, dappling the grass in gold and green. Something smelled like heaven. A tin container was placed beside him. Poor fare, said the voice. Country fare. It is nothing like the gentry are used to, but the likes of me treasures a fine mushroom. Tristan blinked and reached into the tin bowl and took out a large mushroom between fingers and thumb. It was hot. He took a careful bite, felt the juices flood in his mouth. It was the finest thing he had ever eaten, and after he had chewed and swallowed it, he said so. That's kind of you, said the small figure who sat on the other side of the little fire, which crackled and smoked in the morning air. Kind of you, I'm sure, but you know, and I know, that is just fried filled mushrooms, and never a patch on nothing proper. Is there any more? Asked Tristan, realizing just how hungry he was, and how that's manners for you, said the little figure, who wore a large floppy hat and a large floppy overcoat. Is there more? He says, as if it were poached quail eggs and smoked gazelle and truffles, not just mushroom. What tastes more or less like something that been dead for a week and a cat wouldn't touch? Manners. I really truly would like another mushroom, said Tristan, if it is not too much trouble. The little man, if man he was, which Tristan found rather unlikely, sighed mournfully and reached into the pan sizzling on fire with his knife and flicked 2 large mushrooms into Tristan's tin bowl. Tristan ate them with his fingers and assured his benefactor once again that they had been very finest mushrooms he had ever had the privilege of eating. You say that now, said his host with gloomy relish, but you'll not be saying that in an hour's time. They'll undoubtedly disagree with you, like the fishwife who disagreed with her young man over a mermaid, and that could be heard from Gaiman to Stormhold. Such language. It fair turned my ears blue. It did. The little hairy personage sighed deeply. Talking about your guts, he said, I'm going to attend to mine behind that tree over there. Would you do me the single honor of keeping an eye out on their pack of mine? I'd be obliged. Of course, said Tristan politely. The little hairy man vanished behind an oak tree. Tristan heard a few grunts, and then his new friend reappeared, saying, There, I knowed a man in Flagonia who'd swallow a live snake every morning when he got up. He used to say he was certain of one thing, that nothing worse would happen to him all day. Of course, the day made him eat a bowlful of hairy centipedes before they hanged him. So many was a bit presumptive. Tristan again excused himself. He urinated against the side of the oak tree. There were dropping mound up beside the tree, which were certainly not produced by any human being. They looked like deer pellets or rabbit droppings. My name is Tristan Thorn, said Tristan. When he returned, his breakfast companion had packed up the morning's breakfast, fire pans and all, and made them vanish into his pack. He removed his hat, pressed it to his chest, and looked up at Tristan. Charmed, he said. He tapped the side of his pack. On it was written, Charmed, Enchanted, Ensorcelled, and Confusticated. I used to be confusticated, he confided, but you know how these things go. And with that, he set off along the path. Tristan walked behind him. Hey, I say, called Tristan. Slow down, can't you? For despite the huge pack which put Tristan in mind of Christian's burden in Pilgrim's Progress, a book from which Miss Cherry had read to them every Monday morning, telling them that although it was written by a tinker, it was a fine book for all that. The little man, charmed was that his name, was moving away from him as fast as a squirrel up a tree. The creature hurried back down to the path. Something wrong, he asked. I cannot keep up, confessed Tristan. You walk so confoundedly fast. The little hairy man slowed down. Beg your pudding, he said as Tristan stumbled after him. Being on me own so much, I gets used to setting me on pace. They walked side by side in a golden green light of sun through the newly opened leaves. It was quality of light Tristan had observed, unique springtime. He wondered if they had left summer as far behind as October from time to time. Tristan would remark on a flash of color in the tree or bush, and the little hairy man would say something like, Kingsfisher, Mr. Halcyon. They used to call him Pretty Bird or Purple Hummingbird, drinks nectar from flowers, hovers or redcap. They'll keep their distance, but don't you go scrutinizing or looking for trouble, 'cause you'll find it with those buggers. They sat beside the brook to eat their lunch. Tristan produced the cottage loaf and round of cheese, hard, tart, and crumbly, his mother had given. That's the little hairy man. Had given him, and the ripe red apples, and although the little man eyed them both suspiciously, he wolfed them down and licked the crumbs of the bread and cheese from his fingers and munched noisily on the apple. Then he filled the kettle from the brook and boiled up for tea. Suppose you tell me what you're about, said the little hairy man as they sat on the ground and drank their tea. Tristan thought for some moments, and then he said, I come from the village of Wall, where there lives a young lady named Victoria Forrester, who is without peer among women, and it is to her, and to her alone, that I have given her my heart. Her face is usual complement of bits, as the little creature, eyes, nose, teeth, all of the usual, of course. Well, then, you can skip that stuff, said the little hairy man. We'll take it all as said. So, what damn fool silly thing has this young lady got you a doing of? Tristan put down his wooden cup of tea and stood up, offended. What, he asked, in what he was certain were lofty and scornful tones, would possibly make you imagine that my lady love would have sent me on some foolish errand. The little man stared up at him with eyes like beads of jet, because that's the only reason lad like you would be stupid enough to cross the border into Fairy. The only ones who ever come here for your lands are the minstrels and the lovers and the mad, and you don't look like much of minstrels, and you're, pardon me saying so, lad, but's true, ordinary eat cheese crumbs. So it's love, if you ask me, because, announced Tristan, every lover in his heart a madman, and in his head a minstrel. Really, said the little man doubtfully, I never noticed. So there's some young lady. Has she sent you here to seek for seek your fortune. That used to be very popular. You'd get young fellers wandering all over looking for a hoard of gold that some poor worm or ogre had taken absolute centuries to accumulate. No, not my fortune. It was more a promise I made to this lady. I mentioned we were talking, and I was promising her things, and I saw this falling star, and I promised to bring it to her, and it fell. He waved an arm towards a mountain range somewhere in the general direction of the sunrise over there, and the little hairy man scratched his chin or his muscle. It might well have been his muscle. You know what I would do. You know what I would do. No, said Tristan, hope rising within him. What? The little man wiped his nose. I'd tell her to go shove her face in the pig pen and go out and find another one who'll kiss you without asking for the earth. You're bound to find one. You can hardly throw half a brick back in the lands you come from with it without hitting one. There are no other girls, said Tristan definitely. A little man sniffed, and they packed up their things and walked on together. Did you mean it, said the little man, about the falling star? Yes, said Tristan. Well, I'd not mention it about if I were you, said the little man. There's those as would be unhealthily interested in such information. Better keep mum. Better never lie. So what should I say? Well, he said, for example, if they ask where you've come from, you can say behind me. And if they ask where you're going, you can say in front of me. I see, said Tristan. The path they were walking became harder to discern. A cold breeze ruffled Tristan's hair, and he shivered. The path led them into a gray wood of thin, pale birch trees. Do you think it will be far? Asked Tristan to the star. How many miles to Babylon? Said the little man rhetorically. This wood wasn't here last time I was by this way, he added. Them there and them there. How many miles to Babylon? Recited Tristan to himself as they walked through the gray wood. 70 miles and 10. Can I get there by candlelight? Yes, I'm back again. Yes, if your feet are nimble and light, you can get there by candlelight. That's the one, said the little hairy man, his head questing for it side to side, as if he were preoccupied or a little nervous. It is only a nursery rhyme, said Tristan. Only a nursery. Bless me, there's some on this side of the wall. Would give 7 years hard toil for the little cantrip. And back where you come from, you mutter to babes alongside a rockabye baby or a rockabye without a second thought. Are you chilled, lad? Now that you mention, I'm a bit cold, yes. Look around you. Can you see a path? Asked the little man urgently. Tristan blinked. The gray wood soaked up the light and the color in the distance. He had brought there. They were following the path, but now that he tried to seek the path, it shimmered and vanished like an optical illusion. He had taken that tree and that rock as markers on the path, but there was no path, only the murk of the twilight and the pale trees. Now we're for it, said the hairy man in a small voice. You should run. Tristan removed his bowler hat and held it in front of him. The shook his head. Not much point, he said. We've walked into a trap and we'll still be in it, even if we runs. He walked over the nearest tree, a tall pale birch-like tree trunk, and kicked it hard. Some dry leaves fell, and then something white tumbled from the branches of the earth. With a dry, whispering sound, Tristan walked over to it and looked down. It was a skeleton of a bird, clean and white and dry. The little man shivered. I could castle, he told Tristan, but there's no one I could castle with be any better off here than we are. There's no escape by flying, no judging, not judging by that thing. He nudged the skeleton with one paw-like foot, and your sort of people never could learn to borrow. Not that do as much good. Perhaps we could arm ourselves, said Tristan. Arm ourselves before they come. Before they come? Why, they're here, you buttonhead. It's trees themselves. We're in a Zeriwood. It's me own fault. I should have been paying more attention to where we was going. Now you'll never get your star, and I'll never get my merchandise. One day, some other poor bugger lost in the wood. You find our skeletons picked clean as whistles, and that'll be that. Tristan stared about him, and in the gloom it seemed that the trees were crowding about more thickly, although that had seen nothing actually move. He wondered if the little man were being foolish or imagining things. Something stung his left hand. He slapped at it, expecting to see an insect. He looked down to see a pale yellow leaf. It fell on the ground with a rustle. There was a red veining and wet blood on the back of his hand. The wood whispered about them. Is there anything we can do? Tristan asked. Nothing I can think of. If only we knew where the true path was. Even his seer wood couldn't destroy the true path. Just hide it from us, lure us off it. The little man shrugged and sighed. Tristan reached his hand up and rubbed his forehead. I do know where the path is, he said. He pointed. It's down that way. The little man's bead black eyes glittered. Are you sure? Yes, sir. Through the copse and up a little way to the right. There where the path is. How do you know? I know. Right. Come on. And the little man took his burden and ran slowly enough that Tristan hit his leather bag swinging and banging against his leg. His heart pounding, his breath coming in gasps, was able to keep up. There's no words here. No, not that way. Over to the left. Shouted Tristan. Branches and thorns ripped and tore at his clothes. They ran on in silence. The trees seemed to have arranged themselves into a wall. Leaves fell around them in flurries, singing and smarting when they touched his skin, cutting and slicing at his clothes. He clambered up the hill, swiping all the leaves with his free hand, swatting at the twigs and branches his head down, thrown back, he had begun to howl at the sky. "Buck up," said Tristan. "We're nearly there." He grabs the little hairy man's free hand in his own larger hand and pulled him forward, and then they were standing on the true path, a swath of green sward running through the gray wood. "Are we safe here?" asked Tristan. "We're safe as long as we stay on the path," said the little hairy man, and he put down his burden, sat down on the grass in the path, and stared at the trees about them. The pale trees shook, although no wind blew, and it seemed to Tristan that they shook in anger. His companion had begun to shudder, his hairy fingers ranking and stroking the green grass. Then he looked up at Tristan. "I don't suppose you have such a thing as a bottle or something spirituous upon you, or perchance a pot of hot, sweet tea?" "No," said Tristan, "afraid not." The little man sniffed and fumbled at the lock of his huge package. Turned around, he said to Tristan, "No peeking." Tristan turned away. There was a rummaging, scuffling noise. Then he sounded off a lock clinking shut, and then "You can turn around if you like." The little man was holding an ample bottle. He was tugging vainly at the stopper. "Would you like me to help you with that?" Tristan hoped the little man would not be offended by his request. He should not have worried in his companion thrust the bottle into his hand. "Here go," he said. "You've got the fingers for it." Tristan tugged and pulled out the stopper of the bottle. He could smell something intoxicating like honey mixed with wood smoke and cloves. He passed the bottle back to the little man. It's a crime to drink something as rare, as good as this out of the bottle," said the little hairy man. He untied the little wooden cup from his belt and trembling poured a small amount an amber-colored liquid into it. He sniffed it and then sipped it. Then he smiled with his small, sharp teeth. "Ah, that's better." He passed up the cup to Tristan. "Sip it slowly," he said. "It's worth a king's ransom with this bottle. It cost me 2 large blue-white diamonds, a mechanical bird which sang, and a dragon scale." Tristan sipped the drink. It warmed him down to his toes and made him feel like his head was filled with tiny bubbles. "Good, eh?" Tristan nodded. "Too good for the likes of you and me, I'm afraid. Still, it hits the spot in times of trouble, of which this is certainly one. Let's get out of this wood," said the little hairy man. "Which way, though?" "That way," said Tristan, pointing to their left. The little man stoppered and pocketed his bottle, shouldered his pack, and the two of them walked together down the green path through the gray wood. After several hours, the white trees began to thin, and then they were through the sere wood, and they were walking between 2 low, rough stone walls along a high bank. When Tristan looked back the way they came, there was no sign of any wood at all. The way behind them was purple-headed, heathery hills. "We can't stop here," said his companion. "There's stuff we need to talk about. Sit down." He put down his enormous bag and climbed on top of it. So he was looking down at Tristan, who sat on the rock beside the road. "There's something here I'm not properly getting. Now tell me, where are you from?" "Wall," said Tristan, "I told you." "Who's your father and mother?" "My father's name is Dustin Thorn. My mother is Daisy Thorn." Dustin Thorn. I met your father once. He put me for the night. Not a bad chap, although he doesn't have go on a bit while a fellow trying to get a little kip. He scratched a muscle. Still doesn't explain there is anything unusual in your family, is there?" sister Louisa can wiggle her ears. The little hairy man wiggled his own hairy ears, dismissively. No, that's not it. He said, I was thinking more of a grandmother who was a famous enchantress, or an uncle who was a prominent warlock, or a brace of fairies somewhere in the family tree. None that I know of, admitted Tristan. The little man changed his tack. Where's the village of Wall? He asked. Tristan pointed. Where are the debatable hills? Tristan pointed once more without hesitation. Where's the Catavarian Isles? Tristan pointed to the southwest, and he not known that there were debatable hills or Catavarian Isles until the little man had mentioned them, but he was certain in himself of their location, as he was of the whereabouts of his own left foot or nose on his face. Now then, do you know where his fatness, the Free Martin Muskish, is? Tristan shook his head. Do you know where his vastness of Free Martin Muskish Translumary Citadel is? Tristan pointed with certainty. And what of Paris? The one in France? Tristan thought for a moment. Well, if a wall over there is supposed that Paris must be sort of in a same sort of direction, mustn't it? Let's see, said the little hairy man, talking to himself as much as Tristan. You can find places in Paris, but not in your own world, save the wall. And that's a boundary. You can't find people, but tell me, lad, can you find this star you're looking for? Tristan pointed immediately. It's that way, he said. That's good, but it still doesn't explain nothing. You hungry? A bit, and I'm tattered and torn, said Tristan, fingering a huge hole in his trousers and his coat, so where the branches and the thorns had seized at him, and the leaves had caught at him as he ran. And look at the boots. What's in your bag? Tristan opened his Gladstone bag. Apples, cheese, half a cottage loaf, and a pot of fish paste. My penknife. Oh, I've got to change the underwear and a couple of pairs of woolen socks. I suppose I should have brought more clothes. Keep the fish paste, said his traveling companion, and he rapidly divided the remaining food into 2 equal piles. You done me a good turn, he said, munching at a crisp apple, and it doesn't forget something like that. First we'll get your clothes took care of, and then we'll send you off after your star. Yes? That's extremely kind of you, said Tristan, nervously slicing his cheese onto the crust of the bread. Right, said the little hairy man. Let's find you a blanket. Okay, so that's the end of part 1 of chapter 4. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, give me a thumbs up, share, comment, hit the bell for notifications. Follow me on Instagram, and I will see you next week.